Happy New Year's, everyone. Welcome to the PowerShell and OpenSSH community call. This is our January community call, and we got a pretty packed agenda. As usual, feel free to add any topics you want to the issue. I'll just send it there. We're going to go through a bunch of announcements. Then we're going to have some discussions that were kind of going on in the issue, and then we'll go to our demos. So as usual, feel free to post questions there or post questions in the chat. We can get to those there. And yeah, so I think we'll start off with Sean to talk about some excuse me. Steve, we'll
Not
start with
yet.
you
Yep.
on the team investments blog.
Yes. So every year I like to do a blog on the areas that the OpenSSH and the PowerShell team are investing in. And I'm hoping I'm going to get this out in January versus later compared to last year. So it is currently under review. I'm not going to spoil the quote unquote surprise by talking about it too much right now, but it is coming out hopefully next week, and it will cover the broad spectrum of our portfolio, which includes stuff like PowerShell Gallery, PowerShell Get, PowerShell, of course, OpenSSH, and some other related projects. So hopefully we'll get that out there and we'll get feedback, and do let us know if you like what we're going to be doing, and if you don't like it, do let us know as well. And can't promise anything about that, but that's coming hopefully next week, pending more review feedback, internal review feedback. So, and then we can now go to Sean.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Quick docs update. In the last month, we've have a few new articles here, added a new about topic to provide more detail about PS item. Created a new article here about customizing your shell experience for light colored themes. Not everyone likes a dark theme, and the default colors for PowerShell are designed for a dark theme and don't necessarily work well. So this article here talks you through the process and created this profile, if you will, of colors based on ISE's light color theme. And so this takes you through how to set it up. And these colors work well if your background in your terminal is white or some other light color. But as always, you can adjust this to your visual needs and tastes. And I've got some links here to some tools that will help you with contrast ratios and things like that, picking colors. So that's the docs update. Also, there was some updates to documentation for Crescendo, the 1.1 preview release. More to come on Crescendo in the next few months. Next thing I want to talk about is the / comments. So over here in the PowerShell SDK, all of this documentation that you see here for the .NET reference, this information is embedded in the source code itself. So there's not markdown files like there is for the rest of PowerShell. So for example, here we're looking at the argument transformation attribute class. And if you look at the source code here, you'll see these / comments. And here we have the argument transformation attributes can be attached to commandlet and commandlet provider. That's this paragraph here. So you can see how this works. We're starting an effort to clean up this documentation. There's a lot of incorrect information in some areas. There's missing information in some areas. And there's outdated information. So what we're asking is that as you find problems in this documentation, you can file issues in the source code repo for this. And as always, we welcome pull requests to update any of this information. So getting the public involved with this um, would really help us out and help everyone out make this better documentation. Um, and hopefully we can get this cleaned up in the next several months. Steve, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered pretty well. The only thing I'll just add is what you don't see in this example is actually examples, like example code. So that can also be part of the triple slash. I don't know if you're going to find one easily here. I mean, I think that's something that we're kind of lacking a bit in our triple slash comments today. So definitely, if the community wants to contribute those things, just submit them as normal PRs to the GitHub repo. We'll review those, and that'd be a great way to kind of continue to improve our documentation examples. So.
Yeah, and I'll drop this link in here. The triple slash comments for C# are documented here. So this explains, for example, how you can insert an example in the documentation. So I will grab this link and put it in the chat. All right, back to you, Stephen.
Thanks, Sean. All right, so we're gonna now shift over to a PowerShell gallery update. Aditya, I think that's you.
Hello, everybody. I would like to announce something that a lot of people in the community have been waiting on. We have the statistics page on the gallery working again. We only have data from December and beyond. We are missing a few days of the first few days of December, but going forward, we'll be collecting all the data and it will be shown on the gallery page with the version downloads for the last 6 weeks and package downloads as well. In addition to that, that also fixed the full statistics page for individual packages, which was also broken earlier. And now you can see what version got downloaded in the last 6 weeks as well. So thank you for all the patience. And if you find any issues with this, please report it to the PowerShell gallery repository. That's the best place to report any issues. That's it. Thanks.
So thanks, Aditya. Amber, are you here for a PowerShell Get update?
Yes, I am. Hello, okay. So I just wanted to say that we have a release that came out, I believe, last Wednesday, PowerShell Get Beta 18. That just has a few bug fixes primarily. We should also have our Beta 19 release out probably sometime next month. So please be on the lookout for that. Please test, especially Beta 18, but also Beta 19. We're still looking for feedback, looking for suggestions. Also, want to know like if the module is actually working for you. Again, if it's not, just some feedback and comments on that. So please test those out and let us know. That's all. Thank you.
Cool. I just dropped a link to the latest blog post for for the preview. And then Tess, are you here? We can do an open SSH release updates.
Yes, thanks. This will be short and sweet, but just wanted to let folks know that the 9.1 release for 132 OpenSSH is now available. A big thanks to everyone that's already using it and providing feedback, but I'll post a link in the chat to the release. It's available for install via the install scripts, the MSI or Winget, just like the 8.9 release. I'll also post a link to the repo to open up any issues that might come up. And thanks in advance for testing it out. We really appreciate any feedback before we check in the stable release to Windows. That's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Tess. Damien, are you here? You want to have a brief update on Cloud Shell and predictors? He might not be here. Well, we can get back to him once he joins. But Andy, are you here for a VS Code update?
I am. This is another short and sweet one. Well, let me add this other machine here real quick to the call. Uh, all right, that share. Yay. Okay. Short and sweet. We've got a new stable release of the VS Code extension. This is the January release, the first for the new year. This baked for quite a while over the holidays. Most notably, it comes with some major fixes to the debugger that I just want to briefly demo. We had some issues in our debugger that we worked through. It meant moving where the code was executed so that all code when you're expanding variables runs on the pipeline. That way you can do something like this. You can have a variable that has actually a bunch of embedded PowerShell code that's not actually going to execute until you were to expand it. So if I go ahead and debug this script, this B here now actually has a property that you can get the value off of count, but not just that. When I expand this grouped enumerable, which is a bunch of functions that run the argument through and then mod it by 3, you can expand this, and it has the values now, as it should, and as it should have had all along. But this didn't work properly because it would try to execute the code not on the pipeline, and then it would go, hey, there's no run space for me to run on, and it would just kind of blow up. So we marshal all the things to the pipeline when expanding variables now. And then relatedly, while we were in that code working with all of this, I actually noticed what was causing another huge bug of ours that we hadn't known how to fix for a while, but I figured it out. So when we were expanding the properties on a variable, so like I'm going to go ahead and move to the next breakpoint where I've gone ahead and gotten a process object, and that has a bunch of properties on it. And as you would expect in a debugger, you should be able to go to your variable like $P here, which is a system diagnostics process object, and expand all of the properties here. Well, what was going on is that some of the properties failed to be retrieved, and they actually failed to be retrieved for a totally valid and fine reason, like exit code and exit time. I got the process that's currently running, PowerShell process. It hasn't exited yet. And there was just a flaw in the logic. This is silly, but the try catch statement was around the loop and not around the items. So as soon as one property failed to be retrieved, we didn't get any more properties after that. Fixed that little bit of logic flaw, actually catch around each property, and now, as you can see, we can just keep on scrolling and see all of these different properties available on the object. This was also affecting stuff like a child item at times. And where was the oh, somebody actually found it when they were getting an item off of like an exchange management module too. So this was just kind of all throughout the code base. If there was a property and you couldn't get the value, even for a valid reason, like it didn't exist, it unfortunately caused like a short circuit. That short circuit is fixed. Regression tests are in place, as I always like to have. And that's about it. The debugger is working a lot better now. In the future, as I was playing around with this, I noticed that we could very well light up private properties, not just public properties, as well as static properties and not just instance properties. The C# extension, when you debug, does this. And so I think it's a good idea. It's just a matter of organizing it correctly in the user interface and not just like throwing them all in here and being a little confusing about, hey, what's this property I could never see before? So we're going to work on a design around that, probably mimic the C# extension. Don't know when we're going to do that work, but it would be nice to get done. So yeah, please enjoy using the much better debugger now. Oh, and this is available on the marketplace as of last night, 2023.1.0 preview. No preview. It was a preview. It's not a preview anymore. Stable.
Great, thanks, Andy. And now we're gonna go, I guess, Demetrius. We're doing a PowerShell and DSC for Winget topic.
Sure, let me share my screen. So I'll cover a few different things fairly quickly here. So one of our most popular asks has been native PowerShell for Winget. And if you look at our latest release, we actually include a module in the assets, which is zipped up here. And the quick start guide that's linked kind of gives you the basics. So I can get the Winget version. I can list everything that's installed on my machine. I can search for things that are available in the repository. And I'm showing you that NuGet is not installed. Now you can see it's installed. And it's uninstalled. So we've got most of the basics all set up here. It's very early, so we've been working with Jeff Hicks a little bit to take feedback and get improvements on it. We love some things there. The other thing to bring up is we did some work around DSC resources for Winget to make it easier to get it on Windows Server. And that stuff has been out there. We're improving the scripting. It'll also be able to kind of fix an installation that's broken. Rather than just doing some scripts, we built it as DSC resources so that it can be leveraged that way. And we've got this new issue that came in from the PowerToys team where they're asking us, hey, you know, we kind of know some of the work that you're doing here with Winget, with the DSC resources. It would be really cool if I could just have some kind of a file in my project. I can run Winget against it. It'll go do the DSC work and basically apply that configuration to my local machine. So we're kind of making that public now, and we're actually doing some work. And I've been discussing with Steve Lee kind of how we want the schema to work. I think we're going to iterate in Winget with the schema. We've got our first PR open for the configuration syntax. We're working on that. I think ultimately this will move over to kind of PowerShell owning the configuration format and schema. And then Winget will just act essentially as a local configuration manager so that it can invoke DSC resource. So mostly just some announcements and kind of letting you know very early what we're thinking and what we're looking at working on next.
Yep. So let me just call out. So it's been great working with the Winget side, and a lot of the work related to like the schema is going to be part of the new DSC v3, which will be mentioned in my investments blog post. And we'll have RFCs for those sometime this year, early this year, let's say. All right, I think we, do you want to go back to Danny to cover Cloud Shell? If Damien has not joined.
Yeah, I think Damien Damien, are you here?
I don't see him.
Oh, there.
Oh, he just
There
popped
he is.
in. Look at that.
Sorry, I joined a few minutes late, and yeah, missed the beginning. So we wanted to talk to make an announcement of something that's going to be rolled out in the next week. We talked about AZ predictors a while back, and we are going to make that available in Cloud Shell in the next week. So starting Tuesday, so it takes a bit of time to get in every region. Starting Tuesday, you will have AZ predictors available and active by default in your Cloud Shell. So you will have those prediction commands that are going to show up in your PowerShell session. All the features are there. It's just a change that Jason has been working on in the last couple of weeks, and we are very excited to make that available to everyone. Again, if you have any issue, any feedback, any comment, please let us know. We're very actively listening to any feedback on this module, and we want to make sure that we are providing the right suggestions and recommendations.
Thanks, Damien. Before we get to demos, there was a number of kind of discussion points in the issue. So the first one that we can talk to is bug fixes getting backported to 7.2. How can the community help bring attention to critical bugs so that they are considered? Steve, do you want to talk to this one?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a couple of different ways. Like admin.me is not necessarily the best way, and the reason for that is that I just get so many notifications on GitHub that it's hard for me to kind of work through that list. Okay, I think so. On Mondays, excluding holidays, at least Microsoft holidays, we do have a good portion of team triaging the stuff, including like Stephen. So I think that as long as it's clear that this is like blocking or regression or something like that, then it will be labeled appropriately so that that does raise attention on other folks who need to triage it further, like the working groups or the committee or whomever. Um, if it's really like critical and you're not getting attention for it, I'll be honest, it's going to be, and I don't necessarily want everyone to do this, but if you mention me on Twitter, it's actually easier for me to go through those because I get much less notifications there than on GitHub. So that is one venue. Again, I'm not suggesting everyone start mentioning me for everything they need on Twitter, because then that becomes a whole noisy thing that I'll have to start ignoring. But that right now for critical stuff will probably at least raise attention. So make sure they're at least marked appropriately. And then every Mondays for us is community day, spending efforts for the team on community issues and PRs. Then hopefully over time, those will get triaged and treated with the right priority.
Awesome. Just look at the chat there. Okay. Let's see. What are some of the other discussion topics? How are people feeling about the announcement of the Graph v2 module? I see there was some good discussion around that. Anyone has any other thoughts, feel free to unmute and we can chat about that for a minute.
I wonder if we could actually get someone from the Graph side onto the next community call versus us talking on their behalf.
Yeah, that might be good. Add an item for me to.
Which is not, by the way, an invitation for the community to bash on them. Like I think they are doing their best. But we could definitely make them aware that there are concerns. This is the MS Graph, which there's a question in the chat I just see. So this is the Microsoft Graph, which replaces a bunch of stuff, including like the old Active Directory, Azure Active Directory commandlets and stuff. So I think any additional specific questions on Graph, we need the Graph folks here to answer those questions.
Yeah, I'll work to get someone from the Graph team for the next month's community call, so we can maybe ask more specific questions to them.
I think we can probably just go to demos then, right?
Yeah. I think our first demo is Adam here, Adam Driscoll.
Let me do another quick look. I didn't see him. So I presume he's either busy or forgot.
Yeah, I know.
Why don't we go to Doug?
Cool.
If he's ready.
Doug, are you here?
Okay. I'm sharing. Does it look
I
good?
can hear you, but I don't see you sharing your screen yet.
That's a bummer. Because and I'm not a Teams person. I'm a Zoom person.
What? That's
Exactly.
you should go just so on the top right. You should have are you using the share, and then you can share either a specific window or a monitor.
Yeah, I did the share. It's saying it's sharing on my side. Let me try it again. I'm opening the share tray. Any luck there? Oh.
No.
I think something popped up saying get presentation control. I don't know.
Oh.
Are you on Windows or Mac?
Windows.
Okay.
Are you on the web interface or?
No, I logged in.
Okay.
I believe I did not use that. Let's see, desktop. Well, this is going to be a short demo. This is really good. All right, well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, we'll get that figured out, and we can, if you're okay with it, we could always have you come up next month.
Fair enough.
All right. Why don't we go to Ryan then, if he's ready?
Let me just. Yeah. So luckily I am ready. managed to, in the process of whilst on this call, see a couple of bugs and fix them in my code. So after prefix this with, this is code that I wrote whilst I was working at Black Marble, but in my own time, based on some learnings that I had with doing a lot of consultancy with organizations, with people that had never looked at ARM, and as soon as you show them JSON, they kind of went, oh, I'm scared of this. So I built a module which isn't yet released, but will be released later on today, about ARM template complexity. And there's not a lot of code to it to what I thought it would be, but this gives out a score at the end for what a module and resource template would look like. So just give me a second while I work out how to share the screen that I want to share with everything on it. For my machine to actually speed up because it's quite a slow machine. I think that should be sharing.
Yeah, we can see your VS Code in a terminal window.
Yeah, so in total, the amount of code that we've got here is just over 500 lines of code that goes in. I don't know how good the size of it is. Is that size okay for everybody? Do I need to zoom in a little bit?
Maybe just a little bit.
Close this off. So the main meat of this this repository is going to be this measure ARM template. So this has got quite a lot of hard-coded stuff into it, but it's been built in such a way where you can pass a template from a file path that you have on disk, or whether you wanted to just get a template as a hash table. So this is useful if you're actually looking at Bicep, for example, as opposed to native ARM templates. It can, with a little bit of help from the PS Bicep module, be able to get a Bicep template in a hash table that you can then measure with this. This lists all of the current native ARM functions. There was not a way that I could find that I could do this without it being hard-coded. So this is hard-coded for the moment. And then I've got this set of base scoring for each of the different parts of the language. So the reason why I picked ARM as a language as opposed to, say, trying to go in heavy with something like PowerShell is ARM's quite a thin language in the amount of parts to the language. So it felt like a good proof of concept. And this will just allow you to go in quite quickly and easily to go and grab a whole set of whether it's a JSON file that has actually got the schema of it being an ARM template, or whether it's a general JSON file. So this actually can do a lot more out of the box than what it originally was meant to do. And that's just because of the way it got built in the long period of me working on this. Because I started working on this in 2020, I think it was. And then didn't finish it up until a couple of weeks ago, where I was debugging some of the errors. And anybody that's been in the PowerShell Discord will know that I spent a lot of December trying to work out one error that was not causing me to be able to output any of the actual scoring. And that was because I'd accidentally misnamed a variable, and it was just telling me you just can't have a null on this because of that variable name, which was an annoyance to find that it was as simple as that. But it was nice to find it was something as simple as that. So what you can see is we can do outputs of things like whether it's an ARM template function, whether it's a custom function, where it's functions from the functions types that ARM already have built in. And we can go through and basically calculate a set of scores for each different part of the template. I won't go into all of the code because, as I say, this will be in GitHub for you to view shortly. It's on a private repo. Just change it to public, which I'll do at the end of this call. But if I go and reopen the terminal, the benefit that you get from this is that this allows me to, if I want to, go and measure a full ARM repository. Now, I'm using the quick start templates because I thought, what's the point in me using something like my own private ARM templates when I can use something that's public? It's a bit of an older version that I've got locally on disk. But you can see here, I've thought about this in quite a lot of depth. You can tell it to do in test 10 templates. We've got different template test types based on whether the file names, and you can see here in this middle section with measure ARM repo in the middle, we've got defaults, so it will mix out, it will only look for JSON files, but it will leave out metadata parameters, settings, and create UI definitions, which are ones that are quite commonly used in that repository. If you're using the AZ deploy or main template, which is what they try and use in the naming, so they should be Azure deploy or main template, it will match those, but not match parameters. Or you can just say, go and test all my JSON files, and then it'll spit out at the end of it. What I think is quite useful, it will spit out this ability to say, right, what's the template name, what's the template complexity score, but you can dig into it a little bit more. You can look at template path or the template directory. And I've just done this as a format list because it's a bit nicer. So you can have a look at, this is in the Azure Quick Start templates. It's in the application workloads, Active Directory, Active Directory, new domain, and it's got a template score of 1130. Or we can go further. There's a 1942. There's others that are like 216, 105. So this very quickly and easily can show you, well, you're not dealing with a lot of code, or you're dealing with quite a lot of code. And I think that's quite useful, being able to teach people about the complexity of that language, but how quick and easily you could look at doing things like refactoring. So if you've got like that 1942, is that a single template that the reason why it's that level is because it's 10,000 lines of code? And this is actually something, when you look into it, I've actually gone and done this in. So there's a lines of template in there, which is only 12 on that particular one. Even look at the words and the characters, so you can start visualizing yourself a matrix of how much time do you need to spend looking into that particular template to understand that template. Obviously, that complexity score that it gives at the end of it is going to be different depending on your level of understanding, but having a baseline for this that you can use across your team, I think is incredibly useful. Now I've got this built out in a way so that I can actually export that template's complexity score and have different models that you can pass in dependent on your team and your level of expertise that you've got with the team. So I don't know what people think to this about the potential use case for it. I thought it was just something fun to do. That yes, I don't think that when I've looked at this in the past, there's anything like this for any other language. I couldn't find anything that had done this to output a complexity score, say for Ruby files, for PowerShell scripts, for C# files, anything like that, because I think this is quite a big thing to try and undertake. But if you look forward into this, like I can go through for a particular template, so it's not as optimized as I'd like, but I can go through this and look at the second template out of the 10 that I tested. I can go and look at the resources. I can dive into the resources and see that this is a virtual network resource. And it allows me to use PowerShell to do what PowerShell does best, and that's look at things as an object and not as just text. So yeah, that was very much basic what I wanted to show you, and without going into too much depth. I've been sensible and put aliases in, so you can be incredibly lazy with this, as PowerShell allows you to be, as best as possible. So it's there to be improved on once I release it to the public. I think that's all I've got to share.
Very cool, Ryan. Thank you.
Good.
I think there's a hand up. Roman. Go for it if you have a question. Or
No, I
that was
just
an accident.
missed the clap sign. Sorry.
All right, no worries.
I did that earlier there too, so it's they're right next to each other. But very cool. So I don't know, Doug, if you had any luck with the screen sharing, or we can just open it up for general questions. I see there's some good discussion around the Winget stuff going on in the chat.
Like Doug had disappeared.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can kind of just open up for general chat or questions.
Yeah, and if there's anything we may have missed or that we haven't answered in the chat, I haven't been monitoring it too closely, so feel free to re-ask it if it's been missed.
I don't know if it was going to be the same demo or not, but if Doug can't make it back and share his screen in the machine learning channel in PowerShell Slack, he's got links out to his GitHub projects that have YouTube videos of some of his latest machine learning demos and ChatGPT module and things like that. It looks pretty cool.
Good call out, thanks.
Where it's getting closer to being truly ready and not just mostly ready. I mean, it's released, but there's problems with it. Huh?
Might be an accidental off mute.
Yeah. One other thing that I did miss looking back through the issue is Ryan, you brought up the topic of maybe using GitHub discussions for maybe community call agenda items. At least that's what I think interpreted that as. I could definitely take a look at that for using that if the issues isn't working as well, or yeah. I don't know how much folks prefer GitHub discussions versus just issues. If anyone has a strong opinion on it, feel free to.
So coming on to the topic of discussions versus issues, if you look at the way that the overall PowerShell repositories are, if it's an issue, that to me is something that we need to fix within the code base. Whereas the discussion starts as, is there an issue that we need to fix? So from a perspective of reducing the amount of noise to the rest of the team and the working group members and the community, if people aren't looking at discussions for things that they want to fix, but actually are things that we want to discuss going forward, I think it makes more sense to use them first and then convert it to an issue. Whereas at GitHub at the moment has the ability to convert an issue to a discussion. So we're using this a little bit with some of the working groups where we see an issue that isn't actually an issue with the code base. It is something that needs to be a discussion first, convert it to discussion, and then we can then use that to build an issue off it. Similar to the RFC process in a way, but kind of a backwards way of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Some of these existing processes that we have, like in the RFC repo using an issue, kind of predates GitHub making discussions generally available, so we kind of stuck with it. I think in this case, it might be worthwhile to kind of maybe we'll try it out for February and see how it goes.
Yeah,
I think for end users, shouldn't be a big difference. It's just another URL, and then you add your comments to it.
Yeah, and I think the way looking at if you want to look at some metrics, and I use metrics in the loosest term because if you get bogged down with metrics, then you don't go anywhere. But if we want to, in a year's time, say, look, we've had, say, 6,000 issues that were raised, but we had 10,000 discussions that then linked into some of those issues, we actually get to see that, you know, the community is growing year on year if we do it as a yearly thing, as opposed to being bogged down at, you know, we had all these discussions turned into issues, turned into PRs. I think that's good data to have, but I don't think that understands really where the community is growing and where it's growing the right way. But it's interesting data to look at one way or another.
Yeah, we can. I think we should definitely try doing a discussion tab for maybe the next community call. Then we can look encourage folks to use the discussions tab of GitHub more often before submitting issues.
I think the only question then is, should it be a discussion in the PowerShell repo or the PowerShell RFC repo? Because it's not really an RFC thing. It just happened that we early on put the community stuff in the RFC repo. Anyways, we can talk about that. Yeah.
I think one of the problems is that discussions tend to now become an organizational level thing as opposed to a repository level thing.
Oh,
I'm not
you
sure
mean in
if
terms
that-
like GitHub.com?
Oh,
Let's see. I thought that there were discussions at both levels, like repo specific and also at the org. Just
It might be
Oh,
that
there
we've got it
is.
set up as it being organizational level at the moment, not repo level. I'm not sure.
There is an organizational discussions tab that's kind of a little hidden.
which, by the way, I have not ever looked at. So if there's stuff happening there, I've I've never seen it. It looks like there is stuff happening there.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff actually. All right. Well, well, now that we're aware of this, we'll add that to the community day on Mondays too. Maybe we start looking at this stuff too. Okay. It does look like Ilya and Patrick and I don't know this other person, Invertible 95, has been responding to this stuff. Okay, we'll figure it out and we'll make we'll let people know where we'll have the agenda discussion for community calls. Oh wait, when you say you're talking about the no, that was a long time ago when I think the what I'm responding to Justin's most recent comment. So there's been a lot of, by the way, just to clarify, there's been a lot of changes in GitHub. So when we first tried to play with discussions, there was a new feature in GitHub before they actually then added it as an org level, which is again another thing. So I'm not pretending that I'm not aware of some of this stuff.
Plus, you've slacked a few times since then, Steve. It's,
yeah.
You know, these things get forgotten quite easily.
Holy cow! Now there's a whole bunch of memes popping in.
If anyone has any other questions or topics they want to bring up, we have a few minutes here. How can I present something? Well, you can bring it up in kind of the well, I guess previously it's the issues. Now maybe we might be shifting to the discussions tab of the agenda. Otherwise, if you do have a demo, I mean, we have a little time right now. I don't want to put you on the spot though, so we can save it for next month if you'd like to.
Oh, and just as a last thing with the on template complexity, when I did it against all of that repository, I've tried to work out how I can optimize doing it in serial or parallel. It took 5 hours on this machine to go through the whole repository and scan it and get a code for every single template. So perhaps not do that. But I think that's because my machine is quite old. The CPU in it isn't great. But if you were to put this on, say, a build server that's much more spec'd, I don't think it would take that much time.
All right, do you want to give Gail a few minutes to cover some community stuff? There's a bunch of conferences coming up. I think you can just unmute yourself, Gail. Everyone knows you.
Damn, I was trying to avoid it, and I just wanted to be lazy and just type it in the chat. Damn it. Yeah, I'm not gonna do justice because I didn't prepare anything. But basically, I just wanted to remind people, like, we organizing in early March. If you're around London, the PowerShell days. So it's a 1 day of PowerShell, and we do 2 days of pre-con workshops for people to skill up in PowerShell and related subjects. And then there's in April, there's the, I'm not sharing my screen, so I'm just going to put the link. Sorry, I wasn't prepared. So let me just drop the link. I've got it there. So for PowerShell Day UK, we've got this one. And then April 24th, 27th, there's the PowerShell DevOps Global Summit in Bellevue. And this is the link. Hopefully you can see it in the chat. And then in June 19th, 22nd, there's PowerShell Conference Europe, which will be in Prague this year. And this is the link. Sorry. There we are. I just wanted to remind people that this is happening. So if you're interested, you can look at the schedule. I believe most of the schedule are announced already. And if you have questions, just go through those links you can probably find there. And I can answer the questions for PSConf.eu and PSD UK, but I'm sure there's other people on the call that can answer the questions for. I think I've seen James. James Pitty was around earlier today, so maybe he can talk about it if he's around.
Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
Ryan, you say you have a question on 5.q. Oh, you're talking about package management? Oh man, that's a whole other topic. That's all right. I believe get package is a command from the package management, aka one-get module. So I'll give a short version. At this point in time, one-get, aka package management, is deprecated. We're not planning on investing in that space. So there is some. I know there is some capability in one-get that's not being covered by win-get or PowerShell get. So I think that might be something in the future the team needs to think about, how to either we support it or the community could always fork one-get and do that work that way. I know that's not going to be an answer you want to hear, but the main challenge with one-get, to be honest, is it's overly complex and it's not in the direction we want to go in the future. It also, because of the design, is very limited because it kind of tries to abstract everything towards a very simple model. Demetrius, you have something to add you want? See your hand up.
Yeah, one of the things we've been considering is how the Winget-based configuration could use other package managers. So we've been looking to see, does it make more sense to leverage like a Winget specific DSC resource for managing packages, or a Chocolatey specific DSC resource, or Scoop, or whatever, or if it makes more sense to leverage OneGet as an abstraction. In some early kind of hacking proof of concepts together, it seems simpler to have sort of top level DSC resources that do package manage it. They can fully expose all the capabilities of each one. Otherwise, we have this super complex API for something like a OneGet, and then different package managers couldn't support it all. So it's really, OneGet is kind of like the least common denominator. And we're open to discussion and whatever to see if it makes sense to try to, look at forking that and leveraging something like that, or if it makes more sense to have better sort of top level resources for handling it.
Yeah, I would just let me just add real quick. Like I think with Demetrius is a PM on the Winget side. I think they have a whole team for Winget, right? So definitely, I think the overall charter for what Winget was trying to achieve, in my mind, makes more sense for Winget to explore those scenarios and see if it makes sense for them to cover versus us trying to bring back Winget itself.
Just to add on to that, Steve, there was a comment I put ages and ages ago about how I felt that package management should have been like a thin layer as opposed to it being as heavy as it is.
Sure.
I will try and dig out that comment from whatever thread issue it is and try and get that posted across to Demetrius, and so that him and the Winget team can look at that, because that sounds like the right direction to travel if that's what they're thinking, to integrate with, say, apt-get or Yum or other in future.
Yep.
Yeah, we're definitely looking broadly at how can the orchestration we're building support any package manager, and that includes sort of code level things as well, not just sort of top level things that you would install.
Yeah, and I'll make a quick comment just to kind of clarify. Obviously, I know I've kind of put a couple chat points, but I use it a lot with a little bit of SCCM stuff, PowerShell where some gaps are, and so I know when I previously ran the Git package, it was awesome because like 5 seconds at most, I got the installed software and I could process. Now I have to run the Git WMI object with the Win32 product class, which I mean, depending upon how much software you have, of course, and your processor and things, can definitely take a while. And if you have to potentially run that multiple times across, many different computers, the time and other things are, it can be very intensive. And so that's where hoping to try to find a way to make it easier or faster or something with some of the process I've got with what I have.
Certainly worthwhile coming into the PowerShell Slack Discord and chatting about that, because whether it's in our Slack and Discord, there's also the WinAdmins one, which there's a lot of people that discuss that sort of stuff. So I definitely recommend coming to the community with this, because there's a lot of very smart people that have done exactly the same things in the past, and we're very, very inclined to help where we can.
Perfect, thanks.
I do see a question in the chat I want to kind of address. This is from Marvin Carpenter related to invoke command, and I believe the question is really why can't you pass username and password over an SSH connection? So that's currently by design, partly because SSH itself by default requires keyboard interactive password, so you actually, as a security precaution, they want you to actually not send it over the wire where it can be intercepted. But after you establish the encrypted channel, then the user has to type it on the keyboard. So there are ways around it using I forget what it is now, something like SSH keep thing. I forget. There's an environmental variable that the name escapes me right now. Someone maybe remembers and posts in the chat, where basically it forces SSHXC to call another executable to get the credential, which is the way that SSH does it in general. However, I think Justin, was the one who replied that we did enable custom transports, meaning that someone else in the community could, if this is a scenario that you guys care about, which we would recommend using, like public key auth or some other, or SSH search or something else. Yes, SSH asks to pass. Then that can be done by the community, and right now we have no plans of enabling that capability directly.
And I guess my kind of follow-up question to that as well
go ahead,
is what scenarios are you looking to pass a password instead of just, why would you prefer to do that versus having an SSH key? Is that just something that you're not used to, or is that something that's required by the scenario? And if it's something that's required by the scenario, I'd love to hear more about your scenario.
So Danny, this is Justin. I'm not the asker of the question, but I can say the scenarios I have as like an MSP is we simply, for instance, we do a lot of deploying into customer environments where they don't use that at all. And so the initial connection to the system, that system's not set up for, public key. However, it may have ability to that. So typically we use other tools to drop a public key on there and then do the work from there, but to be able to do that directly in PowerShell is an example. And so I'm basically working on a thing that takes that custom transport initially and just, the ask that we've all been saying for like years ago is right now the SSH stuff you can do is hard coded. So to basically just adjust that connector so you can be a lot more flexible in what you can do with SSH. The ultimate goal being is that if I can make that part and have it take a config file, I can have it all work with Azure Arc, where Azure Arc will generate an SSH file for getting into systems using your Azure AD authentication. And then basically you would be able to PowerShell remote to any Azure Arc enabled server or any server in Azure that has the Azure extension enabled. So that, that's an example of, like, for instance, what I'm working on it for.
So it's primarily around, I'd say, that kind of first use case scenario where
the bootstrapping part of it. Sorry.
Exactly. Great.
Yeah.
Okay,
however, like day-to-day work, I mean, like for our usage, either using either using the key or using Azure AD for the auth is the ideal path. So I can't speak for the person who said that they were using username and password, but at least for me, that bootstrap scenario is where it would be useful.
I don't see any other questions we may have missed.
Hey, on that SSH deal, that was me that asked that question.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to do is get it blessed for approval within the organization, and we're kind of using it here and there. The issue is that it's so, I guess, relatively new on the Windows side that there's no key management
Yeah. Sure.
solution at this point. So to be able to do apples to apples so that folks can start using it. That was the ask. That was why I asked it. But I kind of already knew the answer to that. I don't think that's supported in the SSH implementation period.
Not
That kind of
currently
thing.
by default.
Yeah.
I think Justin's reasoning on bootstrapping makes sense. We'll talk about it internally to see whether or not something we'll reconsider.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also, this is Justin again, there's certainly also options like we have some rolled things where we actually, if a customer allows us to, we actually can do basically like the X509 style certificates and utilize the certificates from the domain for the authentication. But that requires like a bunch of stuff that's not really like covered or supported at all in implementations. But that's another like potential way to go. That, but again, back to the original question, needing username and password. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly for the bootstrapping, as you say, those Windows scenarios. But there are other options that do exist that hopefully more development will make those much more common.
Hey, Justin, let me ask you a quick question. In at least in your scenarios, and I know this is not applicable to everyone else, for bootstrapping, are the machines you're working on in a domain or in a work group?
It can be both. Some of them are on work groups, some of them are domains, some of them are Linux. They're all, it's all over the map because we're a managed service provider. So we come into environments that have creative implementations all over the place, and we need our standard ways of onboarding them. So yeah, we basically need to support every scenario from, the well-managed group policy, easy to deploy system to the one box that nobody knows the password to that we need to bootstrap into with a boot disk, reset the password and get into. Like we have to support that whole gamut to be able to bring them into our managed services. So,
okay, thanks. All right, Stephen, I think we're at end of time.
Yeah. So I think we'll end off there. I will shortly after this call, I'll post the next discussion for next month's community call. I don't know the exact date, but it will be the third Thursday in February, whatever that is. So
yep.
Thanks everyone for coming, and have a good rest of your day.